Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're about to dive into something truly wild. We spend so much time talking about standard everyday human health and genetics, right? But today, we're pushing right to the very edges of what's biologically possible. We're going to explore the absolute extremes, the one in a million phenomena in human history. We're talking ancient DNA anomalies that literally rewrite our family tree, the rarest blood type ever discovered, and medical mysteries that just honestly, they almost defy belief. But before we get into the specifics, I want you to just stop and think about a really simple question. What are the odds? When we talk about human biology, we're dealing with billions of genetic instructions combining and recombining over millennia. It's like a giant microscopic puzzle. So the mathematical improbability of the anomalies we're looking at today is, well, it's mind-boggling. We're looking at genetic combinations so incredibly scarce that scientists can literally count the known cases on one hand. Take this, for example. 1 in 6 million, that massive number, that is the actual odds of having the rarest blood type on Earth. To put that into perspective, with about 8 billion people walking the planet right now, having a trait with odds of 1 in 6 million makes you one of the most biologically unique individuals alive. Period. Keep that crazy scale of rarity in mind as we jump into our very first topic. Act 1. The Ancient Outlier, Denny the Hybrid. So we're heading back, way back, 90,000 years ago to the Altai Mountains in Siberia. This is where a 13-year-old girl, affectionately nicknamed Denny by researchers, lived and died. Fast forward all the way to 2012. Russian archaeologists are digging around in the Denisova cave, and they stumble across this tiny 2-centimeter bone fragment. Just a sliver, really. It was tossed in with over 2,000 other unidentifiable pieces. It easily could have just been an animal bone. But then, in 2016, researchers at Oxford used collagen peptide mass fingerprinting to prove it actually belonged to an archaic human. Then the real game changer happened in 2018. Paleogeneticists Vivian Sloan and Swanti Pabo sequenced her DNA, and the results, well, they totally shocked the scientific world. Here's why that tiny bone fragment was such a monumental find. Her genome sequencing revealed a perfectly blended lineage. Her mitochondrial DNA, which, remember, you inherit directly from your mother, showed she had a Neanderthal mom, and actually a mom whose genes were closely related to Neanderthals living thousands of miles away in Croatia. But her nuclear DNA, the stuff inherited from her dad, belonged to a totally different archaic human species, the Denisovans. Her dad even had a tiny trace of Neanderthal ancestry himself from hundreds of generations back. This means Denny is the only first-generation hominin hybrid we have ever discovered. No way, right? The sheer, unbelievable luck of finding the remains of a first-generation kid from 2 distinct human species is summed up perfectly by population geneticist Pontus Skoglund. He pointed out that finding a first-generation person of this mixed ancestry is absolutely extraordinary, and predicted it would go straight into the textbooks right away. Denny was the ultimate proof that archaic human species didn't just casually coexist. They actively met, mingled, and interbred. All right, moving on to Act 2. The liquid gold, Rh null blood. Let's pivot from ancient DNA to a very modern biological extreme. Have you ever heard of golden blood? Officially, it's known as the Rh null phenotype. Now, we all know the basics of blood types, positive, negative, that sort of thing. Normally, if you're Rh negative, your red blood cells are just missing the Rhd antigen. Simple enough. But if you have Rh null blood, you completely lack every single one of these 61 possible antigens in the Rh system. Every single one. It was first discovered back in 1961 in an Australian Aboriginal woman, and it is so ridiculously rare that fewer than 50 people across the entire globe have ever been identified with it. Now, here is the ultimate medical paradox of golden blood. Because it completely lacks those Rh antigens, it is the absolute perfect universal donor for anyone with rare blood types within the Rh system. You can transfuse it without risking an immune reaction. It's a lifesaver. But there's a major catch. A person with Rh no blood can only receive Rh no blood. If they get a transfusion with even a single Rh antigen, their body freaks out, produces autoantibodies, and triggers a severe, potentially fatal reaction. Combine that medical tightrope walk with this stark reality. Across the entire planet, there are only 9 active donors for this blood group. 9. So if a person with Rh null blood gets into a car crash or needs surgery, their survival literally depends on this tiny, scattered network of individuals around the world who have to rush to donate this incredibly scarce liquid gold. To really grasp how precarious this is, let's look at a real-world medical emergency. A 2013 report from the International Journal of Hematology Oncology detailed the very first identified cases of the Rh null phenotype in Iran, and the whole thing centered around a 43-year-old woman facing a truly dire medical crisis. This story is incredibly gripping. So this 43-year-old patient desperately needed a red blood cell transfusion after a splenectomy. Her hemoglobin had crashed to a dangerously low 3.2 grams per deciliter. When the blood bank ran their screenings, they found the clinically significant anti-Rh29 antibody. She was Rh null. Finding matching blood locally, or even internationally, in time to save her was practically impossible. But medical staff dug into her family history and noticed a consanguineous marriage, meaning her parents were relatives. This actually increases the chances of this autosomal recessive trait, so they quickly tested her 39-year-old brother. And miraculously, he was a perfect Rh null match. He donated the 2 units she needed, literally saving her life, and right then and there became one of the very few registered Rh null donors in the world. Act 3. Medical Mysteries. The Rarest Diseases. Now we're shifting to conditions that are so remarkably uncommon, most medical textbooks barely give them a footnote. These anomalies happen so rarely, they practically defy statistics. Take RPI deficiency, which is widely considered the absolute rarest disease in the world. It messes with a crucial metabolic enzyme, causing muscle stiffness and seizures. Guess how many diagnosed cases there are in human history? Exactly 1. Just 1 case back in 1984. Then there's Field's disease, a severe neuromuscular disorder that causes muscle degeneration. Only 2 known cases ever recorded, a pair of twin sisters. Oh, and how about aquagenic urticaria? It's literally an allergy to water. For people with this condition, exposure to water, rain, or even their own sweat and tears causes horribly painful, itchy red skin. But perhaps one of the most terrifying biological rarities out there is fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, often called stone man's disease. This condition literally transforms a person's muscle tissues into solid bone. It's awful. Over time, the body essentially becomes encased in a secondary skeleton of its own making. The only muscles spared from this ossification are the heart, the diaphragm, the tongue, and the eye muscles. Let's look at one final staggering number. 1 in 20 million. That is the probability of a child being born with Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome. This incredibly rare condition triggers rapid, premature aging in very young children. By the time they're just 2 years old, patients start developing wrinkled skin, hair loss, and the physiological characteristics of old age. Right now, there isn't a cure, though medical researchers are working fiercely to understand and treat it. So, what does this all mean? What should you actually take away from this explainer? From a 90,000-year-old hybrid girl in the Siberian cave, to the precarious reality of golden blood, to these isolated medical mysteries. I just love this quote from evolutionary biologists Ackerman, Mackay, and Arnold. They hit the nail on the head, stating that hybridization between substantially diverged lineages is the rule, not the exception in human evolution. It's such a brilliant way to summarize that human biology is not some static, finished product. It's a constantly shifting, blending, mutating, experimenting canvas. These extreme rarities we've talked about, they're really just the outer edges of an incredibly dynamic evolutionary process. Which brings us to a final thought. Every single one of us carries billions of base pairs of DNA. We are all holding on to the genetic echoes of our ancient ancestors, plus potential mutations that have never even been seen before. So I'll leave you with this. What undiscovered biological secrets are hiding inside your own DNA? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.